understanding our plight and what we have to do in order to make about the proposition come true that things can be and will be equal. So when I looked at the fact that there was nothing in our history related to the Democratic Party, which suggested that I ought to be identified with them permanently simply because of what they have done for us. Let me remind all of those handkerchief-head Negroes who voted James Bush out that it was the Democratic Party that dominated and controlled slavery, not the Republican Party. It was the Democratic Party that had us enslaved. And the current Democrat president, Joe Biden, is the one who said they're going to put y'all back in chains. Not a Republican candidate made that kind of derogatory statement. But the Democratic president, Joe Biden, said they're going to put y'all back in chains. And trust me, he's in the process of doing it because he understands that too many of us of color are waking up and admitting to the fact that we have been used by the Democratic Party, but we're not going to be used any longer. So to counter that, if you look at his quote unquote immigration policies, he is importing him some new Negroes. Look at what's going on at the southern border. Look at the color of those people who are coming in at the southern border. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this whole thing called racism is a farce that gets manipulated when the Democratic Party needs to manipulate it. Isn't it strange that all the people, the 2 million plus who are coming into this country undocumented because of the openness of the border, all look like me? So are they crazy? Would they be coming to a country that has institutionalized racism in every one of its institutions based simply on color? And they look like me, they bring the badge that's going to get them killed? I don't think so. I think the Democratic Party is creating some new Negroes because they're doing to those folks who are coming in what they have done to those who put James Bush out of office. And that is, they pretend that they love you. They give you little stuff that sends the proposition that they love you might be true. And then they hook you. They make you dependent on the belief. And they give you just enough that you think you're going to get more. And then they make you permanently attached to them because you are dependent on them. But black folks are waking up, except those handkerchief-head Negroes who ran a campaign to get James Bush out. Other black folks are saying, no, we're going to look at this thing selfishly. We're going to stop labeling everybody, quote unquote, racist simply because of their party affiliation or identification. So we're going to be very careful about how we look at folks. So Joe Biden and the Democratic Party has said, we need us some new Negroes. And what they're doing now is bringing them in, letting them come in without a COVID vaccination, letting them come in, doing what they need to do to make sure that they keep them here, dispersing them all over these United States. But in the meantime, making them feel obligated to them. So when it comes election time, who do you think these persons are going to register to vote for? The same game that they ran on us is the same game that they're running on others. And because they're doing that, it becomes very clear that we no longer have value. But some of us will do whatever we have to do to pretend that we do have value. Thus, that is what happened to James Bush, that a group of Negroes decided that they could not allow James Bush to be a stand-up guy, full of integrity, full of the Holy Ghost and the Spirit, doing what he thinks he has to do in order to deliver for his constituency, making those other handkerchief-head Negroes look like Uncle Toms, and they are truly Uncle Toms. But they said, let's get it. Now let's keep in mind, they only have the frustration that is associated with being, quote unquote, unveiled for not doing that. Because if James Bush is able to go to Tallahassee, bring back stuff to Liberty City from the enemy, which is supposed to be the Republican Party, then the question becomes back home, why ain't you doing something? So what we've got to do now is destroy him. Because if we don't destroy him, it's going to make us look bad. His good behavior exposes who we are. Now, you couldn't do this just because you thought about it. You had to have a plan. You had to also have some assistance. So here's what they did. They got some other Democrats who are not white in nature, but white in attitude, who pretend to be with us, but only, once again, use us. And they were able to raise the money. They were able to identify a person who has never ran for office before. Nobody knew who she was. Nobody, therefore, knew what she stood for. But she beat an incumbent. Help me understand that. How is it that a neophyte who has not run for public office before, who has therefore no name recognition or history, who therefore, without having ever run for public office, no name recognition, can raise money, enough money to defeat an incumbent? No. The handkerchief-head Negroes were able to get in cahoots with those who control the Democratic Party, who knew that if they allowed James Bush to be who he was, do what he was doing, then they were going to lose control of the colored Democrats. So they understood that they could exploit the frustration and the naivety and the jealousy of those who look like me in the name of he is a Democrat who has sided with the Republicans. And therefore, we cannot allow that to happen. Because if we allow that to happen, then we lose control of the colored people. So they joined together and they decided that they would do what they had to do in order to vote James Bush out. And then to top it off, I saw on Facebook where some insane, crazy Negroes said, good for him. The black people voted him out because he was in bed with the Republicans. And that means that he is not concerned with black folks. Now, I've always thought that you get in bed, and it's all right to get in bed as long as you don't catch no disease. You get in bed because you got to make sure that when you get out of bed, you're able to bring something of value for having been in bed. People think, for example, that I'm a quote unquote Republican, every time I say something contrary to what black people are supposed to say, then they say, oh, you just said that because you are a Republican. Well, no, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not upset with what these handkerchief-head Negroes did to James Bush, because I'm not surprised as to what they will do in order to stay in cahoots and in good stead with white people who control the Democratic Party. I suggested that all white people are anti-black folks within the Democratic Party. But I am suggesting that all persons who run the Democratic Party, who are in power, know the value of making sure that black people never wake up. So they started out by having us in slavery as Democrats. They understood the value of doing that. That's cheap labor. And then the Republicans, remember now, the Republicans fought the Democrats in the South to free us. Doesn't sound like anti-black folks to me. But they beat the Democrats and forced the Democrats to set us free. The Republicans now did that. And then the same Democrats decided that even though you were free, I'm not going to participate with you, and I'm not going to let you partake of all of the goodness that this country offers. So it was the Democrats that created segregation and sustained segregation. It was George Wallace who stood in the door. If you go back and look at American history, post quote unquote civil rights eras, as we come out of segregation, you would note that it was Southern Democrats who said, go to the back of the line. It was Southern Democrats who said separate and unequal is acceptable. It was white Democrats who kept us in our place. And then when we decided that we would march and demonstrate to get our equal rights pertaining thereof to all citizens, who sicked the dogs on us? Who put the water hoses on us? Who did everything within their power to keep us in our place? It was the white Democrats who did that. So any black person who believes that they owe an undying allegiance to the Democratic Party because of what they did needs a lobotomy, because they have been anti-us and they have just loved us to sleep with Bill Clinton's welfare reform. They said if we keep those Negroes dependent on us, then we can keep them voting for us. If we create somebody else for them to dislike more than they dislike themselves, then we can keep them in bondage for the rest of their lives. So these handkerchief-head Negroes, quote unquote, collaborated with those who don't look like them in the Democratic Party to put James Bush in his place. They did it. And they should be tarred and feathered. We should not be happy about the fact that we have a staunch ally, a person who was prepared to do whatever he had to do in order to deliver for his community. And I've said to him that you can be what you want to be and not have to be what they think you ought to be and still get things done. I think I've demonstrated over the years that you don't have to be judged by your party affiliation. You have to be judged by your character and the commitment to the cause that you, quote unquote, pontificate and posture in the community. And over the years, we have attempted to do that at the urban league. And we will continue to do that. And that is why I can say that you think I'm a Republican because my ideas, like James Bush, may not match what you think should be my behavior, then that's your problem. But I've got to have access. And James Bush had access. I have been on both sides of the aisle. I drank beer with George Bush, but I rode in the presidential limo with Jimmy Carter. One is a Republican, one is a Democrat. I had lunch with Donald Trump, but I was at the signing of the 1964 Voters' Rights Act with Lyndon Johnson. I went to Lago to be with Donald Trump, but I also was with Rubenesque. My point is, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that if you're going to deliver for your community, then you've got to be in a position to have access to whoever is in power. And having access to whoever is in power does not mean that you compromise your principles, nor does it mean that you water down your commitment to your people. It simply means that you understand that at the end of the day, racist or non-racist, liberal or non-liberal, that people make decisions when they know you. People make decisions when they like you. People make decisions when they know that you're dedicated and committed. And people make decisions because when they support you, it also adds to who they are. And James Bush had learned how to do that. And it does not mean that because he did that, he is sold out. And those ungrateful scoundrels who decided that because he would not call DeSantis a racist, that he should not be part of the party. Those ungrateful persons who don't look like me, who sided with those who look like me, to take him out of office, didn't do it because they loved those colored legislators, but they did it, as I said earlier, because they knew that if James Bush continued to do what he was doing and being able to deliver what he delivered because of what he was doing, then other Black folks might wake up. And if they wake up, then there's no longer any Democratic Party. Don't you all know that the Democratic Party cannot exist as long as it does not have a willingness to, quote unquote, exercise us out of the Republican Party and keep us in the Democratic Party? Don't y'all know, you handkerchief head Negroes who sided with those who run the Democratic Party, that when you decided to get rid of James Bush, you were saying to that party that we will sacrifice anything in order for you to continue to love us. We know that you're making a fool out of us. We know that the things that you're doing are not in our best interest, but as you see, we are not here because we're concerned about the Black community. We're here because we enjoy being here. We enjoy going to Tallahassee, whether we bring anything home or not. We enjoy not being able to deliver anything because we can always say it's not because we don't have anything to deliver, it's because they won't let us deliver. We enjoy having excuses about being effective because we can always blame somebody. And what happened was James Bush pulled the cover off. He exposed it. He said, it ain't racism, it's selfishness. It ain't them, it's us. That you can be unabated and pro-Black without compromising your Black focus. He demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that things can happen, but they will not happen if we continue to behave the way we've always behaved. That if we don't understand the need for us to build new coalitions, new alliances, the things are not going to change. That if we keep talking about institutionalized racism, if we keep blaming everybody except ourselves, if we keep saying that it's their fault and never our fault, if we keep believing that Nothing ain't gonna change as long as white folks are in charge. And when things don't go our way, it's not our behavior, it's not our judgment. It's simply because of the fact that they didn't support us. And it's a crutch that we use. And what happened is James Bush kicked the crutch to the side and said, enough is enough. I'm going to show you that in spite of, here's what you got to do. So he crossed over on those issues that were important to his community. Without compromising any principles, he voted with DeSantis and other Republicans. And when you do that, you expose those who still say the Republicans are bad. So we should be really upset. We should really be irate, because it wasn't them who destroyed him. It was us who destroyed him, because we agreed to side with them to destroy him. And we believe that if we got rid of him, then we would no longer be exposed for having done nothing, because he pulled back the cover. He said that you can get things done no matter who is in power. You would expect, according to the political process, that if we are in charge, if we are the majority, we can get more done. But you cannot afford to take a hiatus when we're not in charge. Therefore, you must have a strategy. You must have an intelligence that allows you to get things done regardless of who's in charge. He proved that. He proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt. He demonstrated without sacrificing any principles. He's a godly man. He made it very clear that he did not do anything that his God would not be proud of. We should be really, really upset, as I was when I got the news last Tuesday, that this outstanding human being who had made unusual sacrifices, who had learned how to work the process unselfishly in the best interest of his constituency, who brought back from Tallahassee more goodies for his constituencies, individuals and organizations, than any other Black elected official in the county. And he gets punished because he figured out how to do that. Am I the only one that's upset? Am I the only one that says that enough is enough? Am I the only one that's prepared to do whatever has to be done in order to send the message that this should not happen and it will not happen again? Am I the only one, pastors? Am I the only one, heads of social service organizations? Am I the only one that's willing to say what I've said on behalf of what is in the best interest of this community? Are we just going to sit back and let a group of selfish people put out one of the best legislators we've had in my 50 plus years in this community? Are we going to allow others to intervene and collaborate with those handkerchief-head Negroes who say they represent us to put him out, which is in their best interest, to send the message that if you don't support the Democratic Party, we will punish you. We will punish you. We have permission from other Black Democrats that if you don't do what you're supposed to do, if you're not totally anti-Republican, then we will punish you. And we will go to any means to send that message. They put out this flyer, this ridiculous flyer with him and DeSantis, as if DeSantis has leprosy or some other catchable disease, as if there is any need for us to do anything except, sorry to say, I got it upside down, I got it up right now. And it is an upside down process with those folks who decided that they were going to do what they had to do in order to get rid of James Bush. But this is with DeSantis, as if it is a sin, as if it is totally unacceptable. That if you are part of the Democratic Party and you are not in charge, that you have to do nothing until you get the majority back in place, that you have to take a vacation until you get in charge. I went back and reviewed what was going on before DeSantis and the Republican Party was in charge. And James Bush didn't get as much as he got this time when the Democrats were in charge. No black legislator got as much as he got when the Democrats were in charge. No black legislator got as much as he got when we were rioting, pontificating, and posturing, calling out all folks in the name of racism. Got as much as he got. So is it who's in charge? Or is it who has the relationships, regardless as to who's in charge? I think it's the latter. I think that James Bush demonstrated that if we are in charge, if we are the majority, then we should, for all intents and purposes, get more. But when we are not in charge, when we're not the majority, it is my responsibility, my obligation to figure out how I can get what I can get for my constituency without compromising my values, my morals, and my principles. He did that. And we should applaud him for that. And we should not be satisfied with allowing those who are already in power and those who are afraid not to be in power to gang up on him and put him out. We should be outraged. We should be outraged. We should be outraged. But we're not. We're not. We're simply going to say, well, you know how it goes, man. You never should have done that. Well, ain't nothing we can do. Yeah, man, you know how it is. So we will mumble, pontificate, and posture. We will go on and go on and go on as if nothing has happened. But I submit to you that it is a setback. I submit to you that we send the message to the children that we're concerned about. That it doesn't matter that politics takes over principles. It doesn't matter that selfishness takes over group survival. It doesn't matter that you can do whatever you want to do to whomever you want to do it to, as long as you cover it in the name of helping black folks. But for those who believe that James Bush should have been unelected because he had a conversation with the governor that produced results, that he should have been unelected because he voted with the Republican Party on certain issues. That he should have been unelected because supposedly DeSantis has him in his pocket. That they would go to certain low extents to call him DeSantis bitch. How low, how embarrassing, how unacceptable. So, Representative Bush, when you gonna run again? I think that your future is bright. I think that you have weathered this storm. I think that no one can question your motivation. your character, your commitment, and we are proud that you were part of that beginning process of identifying young leaders in this community, and that you demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that given the opportunity, that not only can you preach, but you're a man of principles, that you will do what you have to do in order to deliver for your constituency. That in doing that, you will not compromise in the principles or in your God-laden values. That you have a plan, and that you will execute the plan to the fullest. And that execution yields results. That you have made it very clear that you can get it done in spite of who's in charge. And that in getting it done, you don't have to sacrifice anything that's important to you. And I salute you. And I will support you. Whatever else you need to do in order to reassure folks that you are still committed and prepared to assist you in doing that. But what I'm really concerned about is that enough of us are not publicly saying that what happened to you is wrong. And as long as we remain silent, and as long as we know that the things that were done to you were not done to you because of you, but was done to you because you were behaving in a fashion that if we began to identify with it, we would be free. We would be free. So they did not want you to survive, not because you were not successful, not because you had sold out, not because you were DeSantis bitch. They didn't want you to survive because they knew that if you stayed alive, it might wake the rest of us up. So they decided to kill you politically. But I say to you that that's not going to be the case. I say to you that with every breath of air that I have in my body, every resource that we have here in this agency, we're going to make sure that Black folks understand that this was a miscarriage of justice on behalf of us, not on behalf of you, but on behalf of us. We're going to articulate that as loud and as clearly and as often as is humanly possible. I'm going to make sure that young children understand not only the value of registering and voting. Through our man up effort, we're going to make sure that we increase voter registration in this community. But we're also going to increase voter education in this community. But more importantly, we're going to make sure that Black people do not create generations of beholding to the past, of believing that just because somebody did something for us yesterday, that they're still bad today. And just because somebody says one thing, but behaves in another way, that we ought to support them. How can any Black person support the Democratic Party leadership, given what they did to James Bush? How can any rational, intelligent, clear-thinking Black person not be upset and not be outraged about what they did to James Bush? How can anybody, Black or white, justify not what they did, but why they did it? If he was a person who had a record, past or present, of being selfish, of not being concerned about Black folks, about simply going to Tallahassee and not delivering. If he was a person whose character and morals could be questioned, if he was a person who was an embarrassment to us, then yes, get rid of it. For he epitomizes those things that we do not want our children to ever think of becoming. But he was none of that. He was a brave warrior who understood how the process worked, who then designed an agenda, executed a plan for the fulfillment of that agenda, completed the execution of the plan, fulfilled the agenda, brought home stuff. I can see it, the brother sold out, been running around with Republicans, and he only brought home 2 Cadillacs for him and his wife. But he didn't do that. He brought home the stuff for the community. Ask Alonzo Mourning. Ask those social service agencies that he brought home stuff to. Ask them, was he a sellout? Was he a DeSantis bitch? Ask them. Are we going to sit back and allow them to do that to him? And then we're going to be able to explain to the children that we say that we're concerned about that that behavior on behalf of those who did it to them is all right? Are we just going to throw up our hands and say, well, you know, that's where it is, man. Ain't nothing I can do about it. That's just his problem. He should have known better. In fact, he deserved it because these Republicans, since these Republicans, he deserved it. He ought to know that you ought not be no Republicans, no matter how good they are. These Republicans. Well, that's how we normally behave. And that's what they're banking on. That's going to be your attitude. They know that in the past they have lynched us. They know that in the past they have disenfranchised us. They know that the most of us will either give up or sell out. So they know that as long as they cover it in behavior that is quote unquote anti-Republican, that you're going to fall for it. They can tell you that it's all about him voting with DeSantis. That can't happen. That's not what it's all about. If you take away anything from this podcast, this ain't about it being about him voting with DeSantis. It's about him exhibiting behavior that if it becomes contagious to free-thinking, intelligent Black folks, there will no longer be any Democratic Party. That's totally dependent upon, cannot survive without Black participants. They can't process the new illegal people fast enough. They can't get them green cards and voter registration cards fast enough in order for them to stay in power. So they got to hold on to y'all, got to keep y'all in place. And if anybody who gets out of place before they can get their new Negroes in place, then they will do whatever they have to do to make sure that they stay in power. So sacrifice James Bush. You know, big deal. Y'all won't recognize it. Just sacrifice it. And by the time we wake up, we'll have us some new Negroes in place. And then we can move on and leave y'all behind and still talking about those damn Republicans. They won't let us be free. I don't think that's the case. I think we are the problem. And we should not allow this to happen again. So I'll see you next week. Anybody wants to react to this, give me a call, 305-696-4450. If you want to come on the podcast and rebut it, just let me know. I'll give you free time. But in the meantime, y'all be well, stay well. I'm going to do everything within my power to get James Bush back. And I'm going to try to hang all of those handkerchief-head Negroes and put them out. See you next week.
See, the conversation that doesn't want to be validated is, we fought for centuries to be accepted in a land that never valued us, but allowed us. You used our gifts and talents and made a mockery of us, but never developed us. Community unity was labeled as terrorist schools, successfully infiltrated and ultimately dismantled by COINTELPRO. As a people, we endured abuse, sexual assault. We were taken away from our families, we were lynched, and most importantly, stripped away from our spirituality. We were given an identity and a name that didn't represent who we were. Through all the years of trauma, we still rise. We push through the educational barriers that was not afforded to us. See, they don't understand there's no stopping our progress. Despite we got to keep going. Through the police brutality, through the broken system that incarcerated people of color at a higher rate than any other race. We got to keep going. My kings and queens, look at us. They can't stop our progress.
We've been tested and arrested and stamped off for most of our life. Been beaten, mistreated, and murdered, unjustified. Black men, keep going.
Keep going, keep growing. Resilient man, keep showing up. Your presence is the potion. Your focus is the target. Magic man, keep sowing seeds into your future. Don't bargain with the beggars brought in. Make them binge watch your growth from the sideline. Big energy, keep choosing to be chosen. Keep the gift, take it off safety. Wave it in their faces, keep elevating. Without permission, keep being the promises of our ancestors and the dreams of our children. Keep defying odds, keep going hard. Keep believing God, keep breathing through the fog. Don't stop.
One can bring back all of the tears you cried. Just know that you've got the power to take back what's deep inside.
Black woman, keep glowing, keep pouring, keep watering these lands with the drip of your melanin. Keep demanding your appreciation. Keep it at a distance from those who waste it. Keep your worth up. Keep birthing love and other multiplying things. Keep that dust off of your beautiful wings. Follow that which sings to you in bold truth.